Okay. All right, it's got me. I'm going to wander around a little bit while I do this, so hopefully from a video perspective it's helpful, but I don't really want to be looking at me anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
That's what I'm seeing right now.
Got my video, my camera's on.
Okay.
So this is really all about user interface and user experience. My long time doing development, working with developers, my encounter is that most developers don't really know how to make it fit for what their customers want to see. They don't know how to make it behave like a customer would appreciate. They're not necessarily even taking UI or user interface to the next level so that it's compelling, that you have a better offering of a system because it's more engaged with the user. So in many cases, a developer will write something that they believe is superior simply because it does a better job. They believe in their own program, and they think that anybody that doesn't understand it or doesn't get it shouldn't be their customer anyway. And that's unfortunately not a good way to do business, because you'll end up with you as the only customer. So our system, I'm not going to do really a whole big spiel about what we've built, because that's not what you're here for. But I will let you take a brief look at some of the things that we've done into the meeting a little bit. But I want to show you first some examples here, and these are kind of baited questions I'm going to give you, but from a UI perspective, who doesn't recognize this? Everybody gets this, right? Everybody knows who Google is. Let me make sure that that's is that showing that screen? Screen share, right? There we go. Okay, so everybody recognizes this. Now, as kind of a baited question, what's right or wrong about this UI? Chime in.
Simple.
It is simple. So that's a good thing?
It's no confusion about what they want you to do.
So that's true, except I've actually encountered a person before in the people that I deal with that, for example, didn't even know what YouTube was. I'm not kidding. 2 months ago, I called up a retailer, and I said, well, we have YouTube videos you can watch that will teach you anything in our system. And she said, what is YouTube? Is that a safe site to go to? Blew my mind. You don't know what YouTube is. But then that also made me think, well, then in this case, what if she didn't know what Google was? What if she comes to the site and she doesn't know what this site is trying to accomplish? If you come to the site, do you know what it's trying to do? You do because you know it's Google. If you didn't know it was Google, would you know what you're supposed to do here? Probably not. You'd put something in and you'd start getting results and you'd figure it out pretty quickly. Unfortunately, I see in many cases, someone will make a website where they load their logo way up big on the site, and they make it really cool with a really nice font, and there's no information on it. And they're nobody. I don't know who they are. Nobody knows who they are. They think that because they chose a really pretty layout, a really graphically clever layout, that that's going to sell. And to a degree, you know, some of those goofy California investors, they may actually go for it. They may say, oh, what a trendy look, even though they have no idea what it is. But unfortunately, in today's world, that's not enough, honestly. If you're Google, that's enough. But if you're not Google, you're crazy if you think that's going to get you any business or if that's going to get anywhere going. So that was kind of a little trick question. I'm going to show you the opposite, though. So take a look at that. What's have that? What now? Yeah. So we got some audio.
Missing the audio.
Yeah, missing the audio. I also didn't see the marquee going across the. So, I think a chance that stuff that's up at the top is Flash. Well, what's wrong with Flash today? What was that?
Doesn't work on mobile.
Doesn't work on mobile. Yeah, exactly. So, Android, iOS, it's not there. where are the majority of today's surfers surfing from, actually? The growing trend right now, where are they surfing from? Phones and tablets. Up to 46% right now are actually on phones and tablets. So what does that mean? That means, first of all, you can't depend on technology like that anymore. You have to focus on things like HTML5, JavaScript. CSS is important, but the type of CSS you choose and the how granular or how broad you take is also important. There are different types of CSS that are specific to mobile devices. There's minified versions of CSS. There's the full scale. You can go with Bootstrap or jQuery UI or whatever you want to do. There's all sorts of CSS that's out there. In many cases, it'll work to your detriment if you just load in a giant piece. Because now you have to control a lot of little elements to it that are already doing things that you may not appreciate. So when we bring up the mobile element, another thing that's important to remember, and this is actually a natural segue here, is in mobile, what's a key differentiator between mobile and a normal desktop right now? Exactly. The screen itself is the real key. It's the screen size or the aspect ratio, right? Yes. So no more DHTML menus. Those are kind of a disaster on mobile. Any kind of hover effect, no good. So a key word when we're dealing with things like with mobile is responsive UI, right? Responsive doesn't mean that it's fast. That's not really the word anymore that responsive means. It means that it fits. Am I saying things that are just wasting your time, by the way? I don't want to go down paths that are just completely stupid and just wasting your time. So the key there, though, is that you want to make sure that when you're doing responsive, it was actually really popular for a while for every website to create a mobile version, which drove me insane. I couldn't stand it. I would actually go to my phone and force it to give me the desktop version. I don't want some watered-down bunch of buttons looking mobile experience, which is a horrible one. In fact, recently it's considered one of the biggest no-nos of mobile. Do not make a mobile version of your site. If you do, you're going to turn off a lot of users. Phones today are high definition. My phone is a high definition screen, as are most of yours. The phones that are coming out in the next couple months are even higher than HD video. So very high resolution capability, zooming capability, multi-touch. Make sure that in my particular case, I have the new trendy S5 where I can actually hover my finger over the screen and it knows where I'm hovering. Most phones can't do that, so don't plan on hover effect. So in here we have, of course, the classic gel buttons, right? Pretty good chance that what they did there is if I click on one, it's going to give me a totally different JPEG probably of what that button is. Problem with that. What is the problem with a JPEG as a button? What was that? No text. What can you do with text? What was that? Yes, exactly. You can run it through search, or in other words, Google can actually hunt those things down. It can see that kind of information. You don't want to have, for example, you can have a logo and you can have it very graphically created and it's a static image if you want. But in today's world, now you're able to use all of the Google fonts. If you don't know what those are, you should definitely look those up. You can use Google fonts and embed those into your site and have very beautiful fonts, very beautiful colors, different sizing, different directions. HTML5 gives you a lot of power. Even with those modern little badges that you can get on websites now, where you can go through learning code, or you can go through learning, what is it, Codecademy, I think it is. They'll give you little badges as you're going along. GitHub will do it too. You can actually make those searchable, which is really important, especially if someone wants to know what kind of badges are available. You don't have to use just pure images anymore. There's a lot of control in there. Now, aside from that, what else is really terrible about this site? What's that? Yes, it's crowded. Yeah. As soon as I see it, aside from the fact that I'm kind of caught by what's on the top of it, just because it's moving and kind of crazy. Does anybody here, before I'm mentioning this now, does anybody really know what this company's doing? Medical something, right? Do you know anything beyond that? Do you even care to want to know? No. So that's the problem. It's so overloaded. Not only that, but here we've got these giant sign borders here, and that's okay. It's not necessarily a no-no yet, but the problem is we're losing a lot of valuable screen real estate, and that's not necessarily meaning that we want to fill it up, but we can use it for a lot more of the intentional graphic element of the site, right? So if I were to bring up, for example, I'm going to show you just our home page. This is a current live site, yes. Oh yeah, so yeah, when you look at this, you think back to the good old days of GeoCities and Yahoo and stuff like that. That'll probably date me a little bit. Right. So here's our site, our home page. In fact, I'll go full size here. So this is our site. There's some key elements. I don't want to sell you that what we did was the best solution, because there's a quote I love using that may not be entirely appropriate, but opinions are like rear ends, right? Everyone's got one and they all stink. So what I show you here is not necessarily the right way to do it. There are so many right ways to do this, but there are equally so many wrong ways to do it. And it's important to know what the right ways are, so that if you want to deviate from what is acceptable and trending right now, it's okay. You just need to know what's acceptable and trending right now and intentionally deviate from that. That's where innovation comes in. That's where you can really make your mark, is knowing the rules and then knowing where to break out. Okay? If you just start tossing stuff up onto a site, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a mess like what you saw in the previous one. There's no real forethought involved. So on this, as you can see right away, when I scaled it, it's responsive, right? There are specific elements to, for example, a website that need to be really well understood. First of all, what's the first thing that happens when you look at this? Now, you can be as mean as you want, or you can be as, rear end kissing as you want. I don't care. What's the first thing that comes to your mind as soon as you see this? Yeah, it's a site for divers. Does it engage you for more than 2 seconds? So there's a key here. Now, from a diver's perspective, when they see that first image of, let me make sure it's our first one actually. When we bring up that image, anybody that's ever gone scuba diving and has been with a turtle, it's the most surreal thing that you'll ever do in your life. It's amazing. There's just nothing that can really explain it. And any diver that sees this picture that has done this, it immediately engages in emotion. As another example, Microsoft recently unveiled the name of their new assistant, their assistant program for their phone. What was the name of it? Anybody know? Cortana. Where is Cortana from? What's that? Halo. Yeah. Now, do I love Microsoft phones? No, I actually hate them. Was that a brilliant marketing strategy? Yes, it was. One word brings back hours and hours and hours, more than I should admit, of very happy times, right? It was very, very clever for them to do that. It was that one thing that, just like that, in a split second, it connected. And that's what's important that you do with your site. Whoever your customer is, and you need to know who they really are. So you need to be able to connect with them and do what we call the incremental sales, right? So you have that split second where they're going to look at the site and say, do I want to give this any time at all? Now, if they come to the site and it's just loading and loading and loading, you've lost them. In fact, if a site is loading for too long, about 4.5 seconds is the opt-out, where they'll back right back out of that site. So you want to make sure that whatever is in this site is optimized to load as quickly as possible, even if you have large images. Careful about how many images you put in the site. So what you're trying to do is sell them in that first split second to stay there for 2 seconds. Once they're in there for 2 seconds, sell them on staying around for 10 seconds. Don't try and, as you saw in the previous example, where is that thing? Here. I gotta come all the way over here for it. And I've lost it. It doesn't matter. So don't do what we saw on that previous site where it's just a saturation where when you see it, you just mentally turn off all of a sudden. Don't do that. Resist that urge. It's important that you make sure that when you're putting information up here, that it's specific, it gets the immediate understanding across, and you're not overdosing them with too much imagery or information. So in this particular case, it says also medium. I'm going on maybe a little bit too long on this. The key here, though, is I've sold them long enough that they're saying, all right, let's scroll. All right, that's cool. All right, now that's really unusual, right? You can see that we've done a little bit of parallax embedded inside of text. That's something that you'll probably never see anywhere else. And we have the diver that's actually embedded inside of that. It's pretty unique. Now, parallax, the concept itself, is not terribly unique. It does have a lot of wow factor. In fact, the parallax effect right here, who doesn't know what parallax is, by the way? It's okay if you don't. So parallax is the ability to move different layers of a web page so that they actually have different rates of movement on the site. So the pictures moving across are not actually parallax. The ability that I'm actually moving this entire undersection right here as a layer is the parallax function. And then we're also doing it immediately right here inside of the text with the diver's body. So of course we have the ability to roll down really quickly, and that's really fun for them. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to engage them long enough that they're like, well, this is interesting, this is different, this is new, I've never seen this sort of stuff before. And in our particular case, it makes sense because we made a pretty bold claim at the top. We said, meet the internet. That's pretty ballsy to say to somebody. But in our particular industry, it actually works really well. We're the most technologically advanced company in our industry. So what's the next thing to do then? I've sold them on 10 seconds now, right? So what am I going to do with that 10 seconds? Chances are they're, in our case, a retailer. So we have pictures that we can actually move around right here on the site. Pretty cool capability. Now, where did we find this? I'll tell you where to find stuff like this in just a few minutes here. But of course, you can keep scrolling down. We have the same function. This just kind of washes out on this whiteboard. I'm sorry. You can probably follow along on our site if you want to on your own computer. But all these right here are videos where a person can learn how to use the system. And then we have, again, the parallax effect, and then we have some nice little rotators that are in JavaScript. So the objective here was not to try and say, look how awesome we are, because you can probably find just as many good things on here as you can find bad things on here. The real key is you have to decide what you think is right for your customers, what they're really going to respond to, and then you just need to make sure that you're not overdosing them and not underdosing them at the same time. Okay? So right here, I haven't said, check out all these great things that we are. I just want to get their attention right away. Have I killed that concept or that topic enough for you? Okay. So where do you find some of these interesting techniques that are, for example, on our homepage? Well, they say that mimicry is the best flattery, right? How many people have not heard of Envato or all of their services like ThemeForest? Okay, so ThemeForest is a phenomenal site. They can provide you with templates. They have actually a whole slew of different services that they offer. They have Code Canyon, Video Hive. I really like Graphic River. In there, they're able to provide people that are proposing or offering for you to buy, anywhere from $3 to $200 graphic elements. So you could buy graphics for your business card, or you could buy a template or a theme for your website. You could buy newsletter templates and formats. The key here is that because they're actually all going against each other to try and get your business, the very best ideas are actually showing up here. I'm not saying that you necessarily need to come here to buy them, although there's nothing wrong with that. There's certainly nothing wrong with buying something that's a really good job. But this is a great place to get ideas. I mean, you can look up just about anything in here. So if I were to do a, let's see here, where is the, I'm not mirroring my screen, so here we go. Search. There we go. So if I were to say something like responsive, is it not working here? Boy, that screen is just killing me. Oh, there we go. So if I look up responsive, for example, now I'm going to get a result of all sorts of sites. In fact, it's not just a quick little look, but I can actually go and look inside of them. And I can go and see a live preview of this site and see the experience that they have. And so I can get really cool ideas. And what's even better than this is that these people are so much on the graphic trending side of things that they are always looking to find the best new JavaScript goodies. They're looking for the best new little code tricks. And the great thing about it is they'll even tell you what they are that they're using. So you can, oh, there we go. You can actually see what the plugins are. So Lightbox is obviously a very common graphics controller, or images controller. But they'll always, pretty much always tell you what the JavaScript is that they're using, which means that you can go and play with that, and you can see if that's the kind of thing that you want to put on your site. It's important to make sure that when you see this, I'm going to show you one other site here about these kind of ideas. Now, there's a lot of sites like this, but this is another really fun one. You've not heard of it before? CodePen. Really fun site. People are bringing out just the coolest and sometimes the stupidest JavaScript things just to put it out there. And you can put out your own too if you want. But the fun thing is that there are some really impressive ideas and really impressive manipulation that they're able to do in there. And you can just, you'll keep yourself busy for days surfing around. And the great thing is this code's all free. So you can actually just grab it and use it. And there's a couple things in here that we actually use. So with that, I'm going to come over one more area here. When you're looking at all these really cool things, you have to be really careful because you're going to be tempted. You're going to see so many cool things, especially as you keep digging, and you see all these other things that are using really interesting approaches to images or sliders or whatever. You're going to be really tempted to say, I like that, that's going to be cool. I like that, that's going to be cool. You're just going to keep loading in all sorts of crap into your site. It's kind of like what we saw previously. We saw a site that had too much junk in it. It was too busy, too much information for that matter, and it was no longer useful. It was actually working against it. They had a website which is just a check mark item at that point, but that's all it serves them for. So you have to be careful with that, and we'll go over in a minute or two how to avoid that temptation, but still use the cool stuff. So what I'm about to bring over to the screen here is it's important when you're deciding how your web page is going to look, you have to have a color palette. Okay? How many times have you seen a website that has that hideous pink or purple or red on top of blue that makes your eyes go nuts all of a sudden when you see it? Or they have gray text over a slightly darker gray background. Or they have this weird green with this totally unfriendly blue. Okay? It's important that you stick with palettes that are very compatible. Thankfully, there's a great site called Color Scheme Designer. This is a killer feature. I love using this. You have all sorts of different types of strategies of palettes that you can set in here. So you don't have to just say, well, I have to stick with primary colors, or I have to stick with Easter egg colors, or whatever you want to call it. You can actually choose opposites or contrasts that are still very compatible with each other. And for that matter, you can even come down here and you can take a look at a page of how that kind of information would look. So you get an idea before particular case. But you can move things around, you can adjust the scheme. There's so much control in this, and it really helps you understand what your identity is going to be going forward. An important thing to know about this, as well as everything else you put on your site, is no matter what you do, even if you do nothing, your brand is being created, with or without you. It's either under your control or it's not, but the brand is being created. It's important that you're ahead of it, that you're controlling the colors, you're controlling the presentation, the cleanliness of it, the frequency of different types of things for use. For example, you saw in our particular case, the effect over here. You saw in our particular case here, it doesn't show so well on this whiteboard, but that's actually a light blue binary code. And the diver is inside of that binary code. We call that our binary ocean. And we have that binary ocean on all of our marketing materials. We make sure that it's consistent. In fact, we have that binary ocean code on the back of our business cards. It's everywhere. We make sure that if they see this, they immediately know, oh, that's Visible Divers. So, if you're curious what the binary says, it actually says Visible Divers. So that's how nerdy we are. But it's important that you make sure that you have your color palette really well picked out. Now, in our case, you look at the color palette that we have this blue, this kind of muted, almost charcoal gray, a lighter gray. Again, this whiteboard doesn't really help. But we have a very consistent color control, and all of our documentation, even in print, follows the same rules, the same imagery, the same layouts of very clean, very light. Now, on our homepage, it may look like we're actually kind of bulky, but in reality, because of the way we use those JavaScript tools, we're able to make a lot of information look very light. So we actually have a ton of stuff on our homepage. Our homepage, as you can see here, is obviously what's called a one-page approach. You can use it. You can just as easily not use it. It's popular. It's friendly with mobile because it's just a constant scroll. But you don't have to stick with this. And for that matter, you can go with largely one page, but still have some of what are called backer pages. So you can have a mix of them. We actually have other stuff that you're not going to see right now that you can go to our site and see that's not just this homepage. I want to show you briefly one thing when we go into it, though. Okay, so that is just so difficult to see, isn't it? Yeah, if there's a way to contrast the projector. So anyway, in this system, we have ability to do a lot of things in ours. I'm not going to go into detail of what our system does, but what I want you to understand, though, is a layout consideration. I'm not saying that this is the right way. I'm not saying it's the wrong way, but it's a way that works really well for our customers. So we can come into our system here, and this is how we chose to use what would otherwise be a hideous spreadsheet. Okay? So what we did is we have accordion views, where there's more data. So you can touch on a row, and all of a sudden more data is available. You can go into more detail on those things and get more information. If you're doing a lookup, let me switch over to this. If you're doing a lookup of a product or a piece of information that you want someone to know about, it's important that no matter what you do, it's important that they're able to have a very graphical experience, right? So here I'm saying that I own this product, which I do. And so I can view more information. The objective of the way that this was written in our case was it's a gradual increment of information. It's not a flood of information. If I were to say, well, I have these products, now I'm going to explain everything about all of them on this page because they're all the things that I have. You've seen it. I mean, even Best Buy doesn't do a great job at it, right? So you want to keep things pretty light. When you're doing a search for stuff, if I wanted to do the GoPro lookup, you want to have, and you can see there's actually a design bug in there, but you can see we actually originally started with a grid view. And that's certainly something that you can consider as far as images go. The challenge with a grid view, especially when you're in modals, is that you have a limited amount of space to do it, right? Which means that you may not be able to show all the information you want. The image may not be big enough. In our case, it just wasn't showing enough information. So we switched over to a different type of view. Again, I'm not trying to say this as this is the right way. I'm trying to say that you have to really consider what the information is that you're trying to show. We have a calendar in our system that you saw, but there are some really cool modern calendar concepts out there, especially on iPad is where some of them are really taking off. Some of those consolidated calendars. They're really impressive. They're changing the way that you think about how you might even see something like a calendar. So it's important to stay watching the latest trend on those sort of things. That one there. So that's enough on that site. That's not why you guys came here. Let me just make sure here. Sure.
So this template, I could see it before. Particular template that you use.
On our site?
Yeah.
So on our homepage, good question. So he asked about on our site, he says that he's seen the template, which is actually very possible. We started on our homepage with an understanding of what we wanted it to look like, and then we hunted for a template. By the end of development or finishing that homepage, the code is almost nothing like the original template. But the advantage that it gave us was we saw how they were manipulating the JavaScript. We saw how they were manipulating certain elements on the page, especially in the case where we wanted to use parallax, which it can be kind of complicated. To see how someone else is doing it, it was worth it to us for the $40 to see it.
Example, to compare, can you type coin.com?
Coin.com?
Yeah. So just start out.
Why won't that multi-store? All right. Is this it? Coin.com? So, anybody want to take a pot shot at this one?
It's no man.
Looks green.
It's different. I just see coin. If you Google it, don't find it. Maybe it's like.
Yeah. There. This one? Only coin? Okay. I am so glad you actually brought this up.
Yeah.
I've actually seen this. It's kind of cool, but I don't think I'll be carrying one. There's a couple things that are kind of cool about this, and a couple things that you need to be careful about here too. And I'll get to what you wanted to talk about with this here in just a second. What's only coin.com, yeah. So this site is they're definitely rotating images, which is nice. It's a different way to do it, which is great. There's a dangerous thing that they're doing right here, right at the very top of the page, though, and that is they're serving up video. Now, is there anything inherently wrong with video? No, there's not. But you have to be really careful because that takes a lot of bandwidth. How many times are you in the middle of the city and you're on 3G now? Of that 46% of the time that you're surfing through your phone, that's not going to come across. You're going to come to this site and you're going to say, "Oh, I can't watch the video. What is this all about?" Next, right? Now, I've seen also where the entire top of the screen right here is actually full motion video. It's really cool, really immersive. In fact, I've seen it on scuba sites. It's really fun. The downside is even on a good connection, it takes a while to load. And then at that point, I'm tapping my feet. I know that a video is obviously loading, but do I actually want to sit around and wait for it? So, what did you want to bring up about
this? As you scroll down, so you kind of check out the same effect.
Yes, so, yeah.
So this is what they like.
Yeah.
That's what we were showing, kind of reminded me. It's like.
Yeah, these are actually some of them are parallax triggered behaviors. Yeah, in fact, this particular one, I guarantee you, I'll bet you a meal, you can find this identical theme on Theme Forest. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you will. All the movement, all the positional triggers, those are absolutely on Theme Forest. Yeah. So you can come here. when you come to a site and you see something cool like this, the downside is you may say, oh, okay, let's view source. Let's see what that's all about. How many people have tried to view source and see really archaic JavaScript in it? Yeah. And you're like, what in the world does that mean? So I would recommend go over to CodePen, go over to Theme Forest, and take a look around. They're great places to hunt down that type of behavior. You can, of course, Google it, as long as you can understand what the behavior is. So I mentioned briefly that that there are themes out there. There's also different types of CSS. Who here has not heard of, well, I won't make you humiliate yourself, but if you haven't heard of Bootstrap, go Google that. It's kind of a good thing. Now, is it the best thing? It totally depends on who your customer is. It totally depends on what kind of image you're trying to portray. Because you could do this instead, which is kind of similar. There are unique differences, though. This also has a lot of, obviously, interconnection with jQuery itself. I don't recommend running jQuery UI with Bootstrap on the same site. That is a hellacious mess to try and keep them separate. If you can do it, good for you, but I wouldn't recommend that as a practice. There are other themes that are even based on your CSS. So there's Bootswatch, which is kind of a cool site. You can come here and for free, you can get a theme. In fact, the inside theme or the inner workings of our site that you saw are actually a Bootswatch theme. And the reason is we didn't need to reinvent that wheel. And if you don't need to, why? Why spend that kind of time? If it does the job. If it doesn't do the job, go ahead and go nuts. So, we've looked at some good, we've looked at some bad, we've looked at some sources for ideas. We've played with some things. Let's see here. Okay, so data layout, data information. You saw how we handle something like a spreadsheet. We changed it, we switched it around a little bit. We made the experience a little more engaging, a little less data heavy. Are there any types of data that you all want to share that you may be having a challenge with, that you're working on, that you're not sure how to display it?
There's always such problem.
Is there any specific example that you might have? I realize I'm kind of putting you on the spot. Was there any specific example?
I can give you an example. We have this concept in our projects called self-part time. This is where the records in database are updated and also archived in the same data. There's a set of columns to store all that, like record version and references and stuff. And on top of that, we have this structure to let us append some changes and then approved by administrators and stuff. And this is basically like a tree-like structure which can be traversed. We're trying to come up with a way for our operations to see.
Okay. Yeah, that's great, actually. That's great. So it's a data flow problem where you have information that you need to be able to show for different roles, and it has to move through those roles.
It's a mixture of both. It's a tree and a tree. Also, it has to be so you remove the nodes and make changes. We're going to try to avoid clutter.
Okay. Great. That's great. Good challenge. I have an answer already in my mind, but I want to see if anybody else is thinking of something that I haven't thought of, or maybe even what I am thinking of. I'm going to pull up mine while you guys think about that.
It's a Deutsche tool, which can provide you HTML and that has a good server. What is that? Deutsche tool.
Anybody have any ideas come to mind? I have one that literally comes to mind. You ever seen this before? Mind mapping? Mind mapping is an excellent kind of a tree behavior. It's able to show you relational information from a graphical perspective. So the object of focus is in the middle. Its parents are at the top. Its children are below. Its relationships or abstract relationships to other things are off to the side based on the type of relationship it has. Now, the brain itself is a great tool for development and remembering things. It's a really fun tool. However, how do you do, that's obviously a paid-for program. So, what do you look up? You look up mind mapping and scalable vector graphics, SVG. SVG, does anybody want to take a chance at saying what SVG is? Does anybody want to take a chance at explaining what Canvas is? That might be a little easier.
It's like
element on your record SVG is it's not based around a pixel paradigm, in other words, it has a reduction in magnitude, so your elements are basically based around shapes, y, those vectors.
Yeah, you can really chew up some processing power if you want to with SVG. You can go nuts with it. Canvas is a little bit simpler, a little straightforward.
It's not the image itself.
It's the control system for it. Yes.
Format where you specify.
Yeah, you're able to designate elements and give all sorts of attributes for the elements as far as everything about how it's going to present. But you're able to do, for example, a mind map. You could use Canvas if you wanted. I would probably recommend using SVG. And there's tons of great tutorials online. There are already free mind mapping programs that you can embed into your website. And you just have to link up the data that you need to put into it. So that's actually a really good solution. I'm going to show you something else that's kind of sure.
Considering your drawing or something needs to be done, the difference between it depends on your audience and what you're trying to do. Something like Canvas, as Chuck said, is very much different than that. Like, so you're drawing and you're showing pictures, and entirely of your graphic is whole. A little bit. That's it. SVG, everything you draw is data points. You save the data all by itself. So for us, we use SVG on signature. Right? So you capture the signature, save it for an agent, and put it away in the database, and you call that an in-time. The other side of the signature, and the customer, you can save that as data inside of it, as well as the graphic. So you've got a lot of, you have to consider what your audience is.
And also problem with SVG, it's been a problem. Not all browsers support it. I'm not sure what the current state is, but if, let's say, your customer is Windows XP IE7, is coming to your site, you probably wouldn't be able to see it.
He actually brings up a really valid point, though. The point here is you have to know your customer. Now, in my particular case, my customers, there's a good chance I'm going to run into some that are still using IE4. A very good chance of that. What does that mean? Do I need to make everything that I have cutting edge backward compatible to that? Do I need to be backwards compatible to IE 8 or 9? No. In my particular case, I get to dictate to my customer, I say, you will use Chrome or Firefox or Safari, or you don't get to have a fun experience. You're on your own. You can use IE if you want, but I have that luxury that I can say, I'm not going to help you out a ton if you're on IE.
Solution in your space. You get away with that. Other people can't. The problem with just thinking about the most common denominator when you're dealing with like 4 and 6, 86 does actually have support, but it is complicated. So what you get away with there is you can actually find a polyfill or somebody say that or just make it so that feature show up and have some kind of firewall. Where it's like, look, if you want a fully featured version, you have to upgrade it. But if you can't or won't, then there's something you can kind of make a long line of. But, you know, hopefully you get to the position where you're, you know, the solution and
And now, in my particular case, I have that luxury. But if you have somebody like the government or a government agency as your customer, fat chance you can tell them what to use.
So I have exactly a comment to that. So I do contact the Federal Reserve Bank. I had to update the ancient systems, 1970, all corrected. So I have to update the latest and greatest web UI, you know, but it has to be compatible. So I mean, HTML5 and all of those things. Away. But I found a great tool widget where they take care of all the browser compatibilities. It works on IE, it works in Safari, and it looks great and better. That's like HTML5, like it's what I mentioned, Dojo Toolkit. And they have for business life applications like data grids and you know all of that. It's all JSON driven, so it's really modern looking. I found it to be a great tool, and they are at the same time compatible with mobile. So if you use it on mobile, it will change layout and everything. It will look great. So you kind of get it for free.
Yeah, that's an important thing to remember too. You have to remember the compatibility issue. There's some great code out there that you don't have to rewrite. That can detect what the browser is and then detect what the watered down experience is going to be. And that happens a lot today with emails, for example. You'll always see when you get the email, if you block the images, it says at the top, what does it say? I have a problem seeing this email? Click here, right? And in the meantime, it's showing you a simplified version of the email so that they haven't lost the opportunity for you to waste time. So I don't really like email, if you can't tell. I'm going to show you one last thing that if you're wanting to be daring and tackle some really crazy, cool, next-generation stuff as far as UI goes. That is the CSS transform library. You have full control dimensionally. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. And what this doesn't show very well on this terrible white board here is that those clouds are actually uniquely in motion on their own. I can change the elements that are inside of it. I can go like this. I can go Michael Bay. It's fun. You know, you can go with Storm. You can go with other elements in here like boxes. The sky is the limit, really, all of a sudden, dimensionally. And this library is actually really well supported, finally, on just about everything that's modern. So your mobile devices can actually use this sort of stuff. It's really fun. And so the sky's the limit on how you portray data. You could actually have almost playing, if anybody remembers Wolfenstein, the old game, you could actually have data where you're moving through the data. You're actually dimensionally moving through. Kind of movie-type quality experience. But it's really, you need to make sure that it's not done just for your own satisfaction, but really for the benefit of the customer. If the customer is wanting enjoyment, that's something you might want to consider. So I need to move through these things pretty quickly here. It's important that when you're designing these sort of things, you have to make sure that you're not overwhelmed by all the opportunity of technology that you've already seen just here alone. You need to make sure that you pick what fits what they need and displays the data that you need to display in a meaningful way. You saw on our website where there was a lot of white space once we were actually logged into it. It's important to consider that. If that's a design element that doesn't work for your customers, then don't do that. You really do need to know who they are. Now, in my case, I talk with my customers on a daily basis. I talk with a lot of them on a daily basis. And they give me a lot of feedback. And that's something that's really important to remember, too, is if you approach your customer and say, look, we're actually trying to make this everything that you would ever want it to be, it'll take a little bit of work, but we're making this into something that you want. You'll be surprised how much they will donate information to help you to do that, and how tolerant they will be of the fact that right now it may be a rickety ride, and that not everything's in there. But they'll be willing to give you the money to develop it because they see the concept, they see the direction, and they see that you know how to master managing the data. And that's really what you want to accomplish. The customer will absolutely go on the ride with you. In most cases, I'm not going to say to tell that to like the government or something. So know your customer, but they can very much help you out. As far as knowing what to put on the screen, though, who's heard of the Pencil Project? It's free. It's a wireframing tool. In fact, you can even share the files. You can now, in our particular case, we use a program called Confluence, and we use built-in wireframing technologies that are built into that. And you can get that for a really good price, actually. But Pencil Project is free, and you're able to set up a layout. And there are a ton of online websites that can do UI layouts as well, and have all the tools already there, all the modules. You can have one customized for iOS. You can have one customized for jQuery. You can have one customized for any type of experience or tool, UI tools that you're going to be using. The important thing here, though, is you need to not only do a free layout and then have someone look at that and tell you if it's messy or if it's not messy. You can start with the class called, what is it, the Latin text filler. Google has some more modern fun takes on that, but you can start with that, but actually start putting in your real content, put in your real information. The words that you use are just as important as the images that you use and the layout that you use. And then you really need to understand the flow of the customer surfing through the system. So you need to actually wireframe or mock these together where they actually link. And this program can actually do that, where you can click on next, and it'll actually load up the next screen, and you can actually experience the flow. It's really important to do this, because if you don't, you saw what an ugly website looks like that doesn't have a ton of forethought. Okay, so unfortunately, we're going to have to kind of cut it a little bit short. But does anybody have any websites of their own that they want some real feedback from the group on? Now that the group has looked at some of the layouts and some of the concepts and images and color patterns, anybody want to throw theirs up against the wall and see what the group says? All right. What is it?
Simple.
Like that? I'll go to the screen here. I'm actually going to test one thing real quick.
We have an alternate.
Okay. Now, I did say something very aggressive about not ever doing that anymore. However, there are exceptions to the rules. If he has a valid reason to do that, if his customers have a valid reason for an alternate experience, then he is allowed that exception. You shouldn't do, but your customers will ultimately decide whether you need that or not.
In this case, it would be better to have it.
Okay. What would you like for us to look at?
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing is actually
Do you want to connect yours, or do you just want to do it on mine? Okay.
So you can see that's washed out here a bit.
It's not just my website. My website's awesome.
I don't know where I'm going here. I don't know what. Is this your laptop? No,
it's this one. Hang on there.
Oh, I just have to,
Yeah,
okay.
turn it
I'll
on.
just watch.
This is a test to see if someone actually knows the keyboard.
All right. So come over here, and I'm going to. Let's see here.
While he's navigating, I see a word on here that I know what it is, but I question how many people in here do. You go back.
That's an admin screen, but I can't see it actually very easily now. Like I've now actually effectively become a user here. So this is not easy to see on the screen, but
So it says who's using your app.
yeah. But this screen here, this is a bunch of leads that people get as they come in, and or the loan officer get people are using their app. Now I can take one of these, and I have to be actually a different person to show this, so I'll do that quick. I don't know if anybody here knows Dave Stevenson. That's who I'm logging in on. So if I come over here, I've got these leads here, but I've got to find a good way to present moving leads over into a loan application and then seeing a loan process. So I've got this loan process here. This is in a development phase actually, but I've got to have a way of showing the loan officer the process and progress of each of their loans. So they've got required documents here. They've got just general information about the loan. They've got different steps that the loan is going through, and maybe requirements each step. So this is something that's just been bothering me lately.
It's something new to my mind, but let's hear from everybody else. Any ideas on how you might show the progress information? Is that what you're looking for? Is the progress information or progress indicator? Help them
Progress
understand.
indicator time, violence on the line. That's our objective for the
Thank you. Ideas?
It's kind of a workflow. It helps to break it down. First of all, when you want to use it, what habits, what they're doing. And if so, then you gotta break it down the workflow and come up with UI elements that promote really small cycle around triggers and more. How do they, what's going to cause them to the next stage? What is it they need to do? All of these small. Because of that, I don't know the workflow. I don't know yet. This is well, and then we're not going to get to and figuring out that small thing is simple as putting them a list of the things you have to do every single time and showing the system what they have done. Here that box or code check is anything that shows what is and what is done. And it's a simple way. The principle of the apps is how we work what we use how to do. And sometimes what's intuitive to you as a developer, not the same for your literate. So intuitiveness kind of is wrong now. Think about how to do that. You're much more than the actual that's how it's helps them to work, helps them to get success,
Let me give you just a second. Let me give you kind of a counter question here. How many people here are really good at using Google Analytics? Are you lying?
I did it for almost stuff.
Okay. So, why? Everybody should have Google Analytics turned on your site. You should, because the information is very valuable. Fair enough. We can argue religion on that. But the thing is, you need to be able to monitor what's going on your site. So whether it's them or something else that's doing that, you need to have that kind of feedback information. How easy is it to use analytics? Well, for you, maybe it's easy. You've built into the
Depending
habit.
on what you are trying to accomplish. There are some advanced features which are more advanced, but if you just want to see, what is the drop ratio, how many users actually make it to the next page, that's
Yeah. So from a small business perspective, average small business, you walk in next door. Let's go into the restaurant next door and ask the owner, you know how to use Google Analytics? What's the probable answer? No. They don't know how. Why? Well, do they need to know? They probably should. They should know if people are looking for the restaurant. But they don't know how because they don't have that kind of time to learn. They're not in business, a web guy, right? So they need, instead of, and I don't want to come across as, yeah, you're right. And that's, I'm using it purely as an example. So the example here is the complexity of it is pretty high. It does have value, but the complexity is kind of high. You can train a person to be very good at it, but that's not a very customer-friendly solution, which is why Google Analytics has a hard time getting better penetration to more businesses. They have a lot of actual business services that you probably don't even know exist because they haven't thought to interconnect them, make them an obvious set of information and assets for you. Well, that's a good question. It's possible, but they shut down a lot of programs all the time. So,
my comment on the it's very important to distinguish between business applications and consumer applications. They look very different. If your end user are just regular people, consumers, you want it to be made as plain and simple and straightforward, minimalistic approach. But what I see this as more business-oriented application. If it has to do with borrowing and notes, or will be professionals using it. So, the layout, I would make it, it's different. All they have to do, people who use those business tools, they're using it every day. Okay? It doesn't have to be, very, consumer-oriented, I would say. It can be more advanced.
I think you're correct. Absolutely correct, right? The difference between a business and a consumer choice, the motivation of the user. Business users typically have no choice in what they use. Like they have activities for them, and they're trying to do it. A consumer by choice. They are the ones who sat down and they sit there and they don't sit there and they totally up to that. I like to talk to that particular, but I'm done with the motivation of the user.
So if I may make a bold, I realize that I'm just pushing time here, I apologize. If I may make a bold assertion here, I like to be what I call disruptive technology, disruptive in an innovative and useful way. I want to show you what businesses use for point of sale. Many people have seen death by buttons. This is the sad real state of retail. This is retail. This is restaurant retail. This is business retail. This is what's handed down to them. Why? Because no one wants to reinvent the wheel. Let me show you the reinvention of the wheel. This is what businesses use. And this is what is getting us, I shouldn't say it, but multi-million-dollar investment backing on our system. This is point of sale. This is the next generation. This is what the retailers use. and they love it. They love it so much that we can have as many bugs in the system as we want, and they will still kiss our rear ends all day long. The experience is that we understand that although they are a business, they are still people. And they don't want to come to work every day and hate the program they use. We're making their lives miserable simply because they have no other choice, because we don't want to make a design concession. And that's where the difference between a programmer and a designer is. The designer takes in the human element of the experience of their day-long job and tries to make it more enjoyable and more personable. Whereas a programmer says, here's the problem, here's the solution. There's nothing wrong with that, but they need to be married together. Okay? The days of where you say, I can make an Excel spreadsheet program, and that's what they're going to use, if you believe that that's how you can do your business for a lasting period, your days are numbered. Layouts like this, trending and invasive, cutting-edge approaches, that is where you're going to corner the market, that is where you're going to make a lot of money, and you're going to make everybody have to follow you instead of you following other people. So, again, now that's a topic that's near and dear to me, so if I come across very attached to that idea, I apologize. I don't mean to be confrontational, but I do want to rattle the cage a little bit and make you maybe rethink your strategy on how you're displaying information. On your site, for example, let me bring one thing that I was thinking about here. Who hasn't heard of Kickstarter? What do we see down here? We see that, right? We see a bar. Now, that's just one little piece of the concept. What if you have, much like those places that hand out those badges, you get those badges as you earn certain ideas. In fact, GitHub, like I mentioned earlier, has the ability that as you're moving up into GitHub, they have little badges. In fact, it's a progress bar that goes across the top. And as you get your badge, a little dot with a little GitHub icon. And it keeps moving across the top. And then as you go to the next section, it loads a new level of experience and access that you're able to use because you're now at that badge position. It remembers that you're at that badge position. The same thing could be true for a loan processor that's handling a loan. That as he completes different parts, he's getting badges. Why not use, and here's an important word to know here that maybe you can write down, why not use gamification? Now, who has not heard of gamification? It's kind of a new word. So gamification is the concept of taking the very best meaningful and memory-causing elements of games and putting them into a UI, putting them into a program. You're not making the program a game. You're simply taking the elements from a game that make it most memorable and most lasting and most engaging to stay using. If you haven't heard about it much lately, you're going to hear about it a ton in the near future. Just about every interface major company is really switching into the concept of gamification. It's really important to know how to master that. Badges are just the beginning of that concept. There are rewards. They're even just little, you toss up a little confetti visually on the site. This sort of stuff is fun. It's rewarding. It changes the mundane and makes it just a little bit different, a little bit there, and a little exciting for them. And they need that in their mundane lives. I can't imagine a more boring job than a loan processor. Maybe not good. So those dots that move across, I think, are, in my opinion, something that I would consider. I'm not going to say that you should do it, but it certainly comes to mind. Does anybody else have anything else that comes to mind really quickly?
There's one thing. We had to improve our UI for our internal users, not just to make them feel better, but also to enable them to onboard more customers a day. This is like a tiger team kind of a thing. Improve the UI to speed up the operations. That's also important.
So, because we made our interface and our program so unique and so modern and fun and graphic, without being, well, not graphic, graphical, without being too overloaded, the difference is that now the major players in the retail world are now actually saying, all these big names that you know really well that handle retail, we're done with them. We're not even going to give them a shot now that we've seen this. Because they realize that it's a game changer. If you're the game changer, even if you already have a program out, if you can change that experience and really turn it into something engaging and interesting and fresh, you're not going to be replaced by someone like me. That makes sense? So hopefully I've not overdone that topic. So as far as tonight goes, that's a wrap. I mean, I've gone well over the time that I should have, and I really appreciate you guys being willing to sit there and take it. Hopefully there's been some useful information. If this has been completely useless information to you, feel free to delete it from your memory. Okay? I'm not here to say that this is the right way. I'm simply exposing you to the information that's out there, that's trending, it's modern now, and giving you something to consider. So, thank you.
Thank you.